All right, let's dive into a story about how one of the biggest revolutions in logic and philosophy started with, well, a simple case of mistaken identity in the sky. For centuries, people looked up and saw two different stars, one in the morning and one in the evening. The discovery that they were actually the exact same thing ended up changing how we think about truth itself. It's a wild ride, so let's break it down.
So here's the puzzle that really kicked everything off. The statement, the morning star is the evening star. Now, for ages, these were thought to be two totally different things. So when astronomers finally figured out they were both, in fact, the planet Venus, this statement wasn't just a fact, it was a huge scientific discovery. But wait a second, how can that be? Isn't that statement just saying a thing is, well, itself?
I mean, look at the difference here. If I say Venus is Venus, that's obvious, right? It tells you absolutely nothing new. It's totally trivial. But if I say the morning star is the evening star, that feels different. That feels like you've just learned something real. So what gives? Why is one statement kind of empty while the other is packed with new information? Now, this wasn't just some fun little word game. Answering this question, this puzzle about identity, led the philosopher and mathematician Gottlob Frege to a pretty radical conclusion: that the entire foundation of logic needed to be torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. To really get what Frege did, you have to understand what he was up against. See, back then, logic was all tangled up with psychology. It was often treated as just the study of how our minds happen to think. But for Frege, that was a gigantic mistake. Frege's mission was crystal clear. He said, look, logic isn't about the messy, subjective way our individual brains work. It should be an objective science. It's about finding the absolute, unchanging laws of truth, laws that are out there, independent of us, kind of like the laws of physics. His goal was to basically purify logic, to strip away every last bit of human psychology and create a system for pure thought that was as clean, precise, and objective as arithmetic is for numbers. But to pull that off, he was going to need a brand new tool. And that tool was his masterpiece, the Begriffsschrift. It was a completely new language he invented, designed for one single purpose: to express pure thought without any of the fuzziness of human language. The name Begriffsschrift literally means concept script, and that's exactly what it was. Imagine a language with zero ambiguity, no poetry, no emotional baggage, just a perfect system of signs designed to lay out logical relationships with the kind of clarity you see in a mathematical equation. And it was right in the middle of building this concept script that Frege finally cracked the code on the Morningstar puzzle. And his solution? Well, it was so simple, so elegant, and it would change philosophy forever. Okay, here's the core idea. Frege realized the puzzle isn't about the actual object in the sky at all. It's about the words we use to talk about it. The discovery isn't that a thing is identical to itself. It's about the relationship between two different names, or as he called them, signs. So let's apply this directly. We have one sign, the morning star. It carries the idea of that bright thing you see in the sky at dawn. Then we have a totally different sign, the evening star, which means that bright thing you see in the sky at dusk. They are two completely different signs representing two different ideas. But, and here's the key, it just so happens that they both point to the very same object out there in space, the planet Venus. So the big aha moment is this. The discovery isn't that Venus is Venus. Of course it is. The discovery is that two completely different names, the morning star and the evening star, actually refer to the exact same thing. The new knowledge we gain is about our language and how it maps onto reality. And this led Frege to make it official. He basically split identity into two types. You've got the identity of things, like Venus equals Venus, which is always trivial. But then you have the identity of signs, when two different names point to one object. And that is where real, valuable new knowledge comes from. Okay, but this raises the next big question, right? If the really interesting kind of identity is all about two signs pointing to the same thing, how can we be absolutely 100% sure they do? What's the ultimate test? For the answer, Frege looked back to an idea from the philosopher Leibniz. It's called the principle of the identity of indiscernibles, which sounds complicated, but the idea is actually super simple. For two things to be truly one and the same, there can be zero difference between them. They have to share every single property, down to the last detail. So Frege took this idea and gave it a really practical linguistic spin.
He said, if the morning star and Venus really do refer to the same thing, then you should be able to swap their names in any true sentence, and that sentence has to stay true. For example, if Venus is orbited by no moons is true, then the morning star is orbited by no moons must also be true. This complete interchangeability, that's the ultimate proof of identity.
So why does any of this matter? I mean, who cares about the difference between a sign and the thing it refers to? It might seem like a tiny little philosophical point, but its impact was absolutely enormous.
I mean, the ripple effects from this one insight were just huge. It was a key step in turning logic into a real, rigorous science, completely separate from the whims of psychology. It laid the groundwork for pretty much all of modern philosophy of language, the whole study of how our words hook onto the world. And it gave us this powerful way of understanding how we can recognize that something is the same thing, even when it's presented to us in totally different ways. And that kind of leaves us with a final, really fascinating question to chew on. Frege showed us that the name you use for something, the sign, actually changes its information value. The morning star tells a very different story than Venus. So it makes you wonder, what else in our world is being shaped not by what it is, but by the particular language we happen to be using to describe it?